There you go. Can you tell me the pros and cons for silicone and polyurethane implants? Okay, so right, different types of implants, basically related to the contents of the implant, the shell of the implant. The contents of the implant are either saline or silicone, and in this country we mainly use silicone implants, so they're silicone gel inside, and so the difference in the majority of the implants in this country are silicone gel implants, as in the contents of the implants are silicone gel, but the coating does differ. So the coating can be a silicone, just a silicone shell. So even saline implants have got a silicone shell. So so there's a silicone shell, or you can have a polyurethane foam shell of the implant. And when you get silicone shells, they also come in a variety, and the variety depends on how rough the shell is, which is called textured. So the initial ones were smooth, completely smooth shell, and then they made them slightly roughened. They roughened the surface, which was called a textured implant. So you can get a completely smooth silicone implant, or a roughened silicone implant, which is called a textured silicone implant. And then you can also get polyurethane foam implants, which have got a foam coating around the silicone implant. And so the difference is how rough they are, basically. So a smooth implant is completely smooth, a textured implant is a bit rough, and a polyurethane foam implant is very rough because it's like a foam. So it's and the roughness encourages the scar tissue to grow in the nooks and crannies of the roughness, which means that when over time that scar tissue contracts, as it always does, rather than with a smooth implant, it contracts as a shell around the smooth implant. The rougher implants, it contracts in all different directions, and so it's less likely to go hard over time. So a smooth implant is more likely to go hard than a textured implant, and a textured implant is more likely to go hard than a polyurethane implant. So the rougher it is, the more rough the surface is, the less likely it's going to go hard, and the less likely you're going to need to have it changed, because probably the most common reason to change an implant is because it's gone hard. And so that is the great thing about having it rougher. So that is a big pro of a polyurethane foam implant, because it's actually got a foam coating. It's less likely to go hard in the future. However, there has to be a con. If there was only pros, then everyone would use them, and everyone doesn't use them. So the con is that a couple of things, but probably the most important thing is ALCL. It's a very rare cancer associated with implants. We don't really know what causes it, but it seems to be related to the roughness of the implants. So the rougher the implant, the more risk of the ALCL. So polyurethane implants have got a higher risk of ALCL than textured silicone implants, which have got a higher risk than smooth silicone implants. So the completely smooth implants are less likely to get the ALCL, more likely to go hard. The rough implants are less likely to go hard, more likely to get the ALCL. And so broadly speaking, that's the difference. These polyurethane ones are a little bit more expensive. They're a little bit more difficult to handle. They feel a little bit firmer in the first instance. So those are all negative things about it. The other good thing about polyurethane implants is they stay where you put them. So they're very good in situations where you have malposition, bottoming out, or synmastia, or if you've got a problem with your implants, polyurethane implants are a great way to try and help to solve that problem. If you think you're having teardrop implants, polyurethane implants are much less likely to rotate. You can't even get a teardrop implant with a smooth shell, because a smooth shelled implant doesn't really integrate with the tissues and will move around freely. So you can't get a teardrop shaped smooth implant. So teardrop implants is less likely to rotate. They're a little bit more difficult to handle, a little bit more difficult to use. Years ago, they were implicated with the cancer in rats. They took some stuff off the polyurethane and injected into rats, and the rats got cancer. So that was many years ago, and they were taken off the market for a while. That has now been proved not to be the case in humans, only in rats. So that's less of a thing, although the ALCL, which is a different thing to what the cancer in rats was having, is a thing, but that's not unique to polyurethane implants. You can also get it with textured silicone implants, but it does seem to be a higher risk with polyurethane. So I guess in a nutshell, polyurethane implants are good because they're less likely to be changed, because they're less likely to go hard, but they do have a higher risk of ALCL, albeit a very rare cancer. It is still a higher risk with polyurethane than a silicone implants. And as I say, within silicone, you can get a textured and a smooth. And in fact, just a further, I need a graph here, further, textured implants come as micro and macro textured. They're becoming less rough, less aggressive, the texturing, simply because people are worried about the cancer. So you get micro textured, macro textured, and smooth implants. So most textured implants now are micro textured implants. But yeah, basically they're either a bit rough, completely smooth, or very rough. Pros and cons of silicone and polyurethane implants in a nutshell.